The recession of 2007 to 2009 was the longest recession since World War II. Here is how the recession affected one person. Hello, what is your full name?
Jeffrey Dudovitz.
And where are you from?
Originally from Atlanta, Georgia, now living in Detroit, Michigan.
How old were you in 2009?
I was 38 years old.
Okay, what do you recall about your financial life before the Great Recession, economically and business?
Before the recession, I was doing very well. I had purchased a practice 4 years earlier, which was very successful, so I eventually purchased a second practice in 2008. I also owned a home, which had increased in value. It was almost twice what I had purchased it for, so I took the equity in the home to put a large addition onto our house.
Okay, before 2007, have you ever had any economic hardships?
No, I had been a student most of my life until I started practicing, and about 3 years after I started practicing, I went into business for myself and purchased a thriving practice.
What financial hardships did you experience during this economic situation?
During this time, the auto industry here in Michigan was struggling, and people were losing jobs, and people were losing their insurance. Being that that was a huge percentage of your patient base, the numbers of patients that you were seeing was going down daily. So the number of dollars coming in the office was affected greatly.
What emotional response did you and your family have to these conditions?
It was actually very stressful. I was just putting a lot of money and equity from our home to put in addition at the time that I was now losing patients and losing dollars coming in. I had many sleepless nights. I probably slept on the couch for 6 months with very little sleep I got, worrying about was I even going to be able to stay in business. The auto industry was struggling greatly, so I was losing patients literally daily.
How did you feel about the financial fallout given to the banking industry, and why?
That's a tough one because the banking industry kind of made their mistakes. They made their own bed, so they probably should have had to pay more for the mistakes that they made, just like the rest of us would have, but I think they needed it in order for the economy to stabilize.
And how do you feel about the financial fallout given to the automotive industry, and why?
That's a very similar answer. The auto industry and the unions made some very poor choices and didn't look ahead, putting them in such a bad financial crisis. But Michigan, more probably than any other state, needed them to be bailed out so that we didn't have too many unemployed people here. And me personally, I needed these people to have jobs and have insurance so that they would come to me as patients, because that is my economic resource.
How do you feel about the expansion of entitlement programs during the Great Depression?
Well, with the entitlement programs, the problem that I saw here in Michigan, especially having a lot of the blue collar base as my patients, I think a lot of them learned how to take advantage of and abuse the system. So I'm not so sure that the government's intended use of their dollars was done appropriately.
Do you think that recessions or depressions can be prevented? Why or why not?
I don't think they necessarily can be prevented. I think that just like in anything else, there's going to be ups and downs. And when it comes to the economy, it's no different. You also have such a global economy that everybody has their own interests. Also, most people are looking short term at how things benefit themselves, and that doesn't necessarily make for good long-term economics. So some of the people making decisions are probably going to be making these short-sighted decisions that in the end may cause another recession or depression.
How has the Great Recession changed you over the years?
It's changed me in a couple ways. First of all, I survived the recession. So I've learned to take the ups and the downs that come with owning your own business in more of a stride. I don't get as emotionally caught up in the ebbs and flows of months of doing well versus months of not doing as well. I also learned that you have to prepare for these things. You have to put away, and you always have to have something in reserve for when the days are darker.
What lessons should be learned from the Great Recession?
Same thing. I think we all need to realize that just because things are good now, they may not always be good. You have to prepare for any situation, and you have to protect yourself by making wise choices with your money and your business so that you can survive the bad times just as well as the good.
And lastly, were any of your friends affected more than you were at this time?
Yes, there were some, one of them being my office manager in particular. At this time, she lost her house to foreclosure. She also had car issues where she was unable to actually pay for her car to be fixed. That affected me also because now she had no transportation to get to work. So I had to help her out there as well. She was affected much more than I was.
All right, thank you for doing this interview. It was great.
Thank you.